welcome back to the afternoon service. Thank you all for sticking around. Thank you for those who helped with the meal and cleaning up afterwards. Leftovers are always good. Amen. Let's go ahead and stand. Let's sing this afternoon hymn 345, A New Name Written Down in Glory. Sing it out. Here we go. I was once a sinner, but I came pardon to receive from my Lord. This was freely given, and I found that he always kept his word. There's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine, oh yes, it's mine. And the white-robed angels sing the story, a sinner has come home. For there's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine, oh yes, it's mine. With my sins forgiven, I am bound for heaven, never more to. On the second, I was humbly kneeling at the cross, fearing not but God's angry frown, when the heavens opened and I saw that my name was written down. For there's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine, oh yes, it's mine. And the white-robed angels sing the story, a sinner has come home. For there's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine, oh yes, it's mine. With my sins forgiven, I am bound for heaven, never more to. On the last, in the book 'tis written, saved by grace. Oh, the joy that came to my soul. Now I am forgiven, and I know by the blood I am made whole. For there's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine, oh yes, it's mine. And the white-robed angels sing the story, a sinner has come home. For there's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine, oh yes, it's mine. With my sins forgiven, I am bound for heaven, never more to roam. Great sing, amen. Again, wonderful to have you back here. Thanks for sticking around. I know that it is a blessing to me to see you all here, and it's a blessing to the Meads as well to show an interest in the ministry that they've been doing. I know they've been out there for quite some time. Got some time to catch up with them this afternoon. I got to hear some good stuff happening with them just here being back in the States, and I'm looking forward to what they have to update us this afternoon. So let's go ahead and pray. We'll sing one more congregational, and then we will hand it over to Brother Mead. So let's pray. Dearly Father, we just thank you for this time you've given us just to take apart, just to take some time apart from our busy lives, just to focus on just worldwide missions and the ability that you've given us to support this family financially and to hear exactly what they're doing just around the world. We just thank you for them and their ministry, and for us as we're able to support them. Be with us this afternoon. Just help us to fully comprehend the scope of what's going on, just for us to enjoy our time in your house, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Remain standing, hymn number 180. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. We'll sing this 2 times through. Here we go. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing, I will sing, I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness, thy faithfulness. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness to all generations. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing, I will sing, I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness, thy faithfulness. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness to all generations. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing, I will sing, I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord. Gracie, you may be seated. As Brother Mead comes on up, I got a question for you. First of all, I'm going to test your memory here really quick. Okay. This would have been probably close to 12 to 13 years ago. Okay. But I'm gonna remind you, like, this, when I think of the Meads, this is the story that comes to mind. Okay. So I grew up in Fostoria, and obviously that's the sending church. So we get a lot of them coming in and out frequently. And there was a time, a long time ago, that the church, maybe it wasn't just for you specifically, but it's just for missionaries in general, that they were collecting a bunch of toys to send to you guys a long time ago. And I remember being about, I think it was probably like 9 or 10-ish. We had this really small trampoline.
Okay.
Very, very little. And as a kid, we were very much like, okay, what can we give to the missionaries? And it was just this little teeny tiny thing, and we gave it to the church, and they sent it all the way to you guys in Senegal. Do you remember Tristan being really little and having this? So you gave an update about it, because my mom had found out about it, and they said that all the kids in the village would get together and line up and jump off this little trampoline.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that. Do you remember how long ago that was?
It
long time ago.
Yeah, probably at least 14 years ago.
Yeah, something like that.
13 or 14 years ago.
So quite a long time ago.
Do you remember Tristan? He kind of, he's like, yeah, he kind of recalls.
Like vaguely.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. But anyway, so that was kind of like, when I think of you guys, that's like what I think of. Right. And just to kind of, I'll hand it off to you right after this, but just from a young age, involving your kids just in missions as well, right? Being focused on, okay, these are people who are giving of their time, giving of their energy around the world, right? And how your kids, even from a young age, can be impacted by praying and giving gifts and all these things. So appreciative of your ministry. I know that it had an impact on me even from just a young age. Yeah. So we'll hand it over to you and give us your updates.
Thank you, Pastor Tim. Yeah, we try to, we have so many different type of outreaches, and a lot of times people will send us, like Fostoria did. I do vaguely remember that. It's incredible how your memory works. All of a sudden, I'll be laying there tonight probably like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I do remember the little trampoline. I do remember the first year that we were there, and Tristan was just a baby. He was born 2 months before we moved to Senegal after language school. And I remember, we moved into this house. It was an old house, but it had a big yard with about 12 different fruit trees. And so we loved that. We loved having the open space. The house was pretty beat up. In fact, it was getting so bad, a new leak in every corner of the house every rain season. We eventually told the landlord, I think you got to replace the roof before we, continue living here. And he agreed to it. And I went over there one day, and they were up there, banging away at it's all cement, right? So it's poured. Well, this was done before the modern technology of putting block down that has cross beams, and then with wings jetting out these, they lay the block in, rebar holding it together, then they pour it. Well, before that, when our house was built, they would just lay rebar here and there, kind of weave it in and out, thinnest rebar you'd ever see, and then prop it up with all these poles and sticks and stuff, and then pour it and hope it holds, when you're done. Have a couple cross beams here and there. And I went up there on the roof, and the mason said, come here, you got to see this. He said, you see this big hole right here? I said, yeah, that was our bedroom. He said, do you see the cross beam with the rebar? I said, I don't. He said, exactly. It's all eaten away. He said, we took a sledgehammer, and on the second hit, the entire thing collapsed. And I thought, well, that's where we slept there for a night. So, Yeah, all right. The Lord does take care of you, and we were very appreciative of that. But I remember we were in that house, and we had brought over a pool for our kids and our family to enjoy because it gets really hot over there, 120 degrees. I grew up here in Michigan. You know how Michigan winters are. And I've always hated Michigan winters. I just don't like it. Julie grew up in Nova Scotia, right off the Atlantic Ocean. And so it's just always chilly there. And she was used to diving in the ocean when it's only 50 degrees or something. It just freezing cold waters, and she'd be, flopping around like a seal, just having a great time. That's not for me. I'll take the heat. But still, we put up a pool. And I did not like having a pool over there because when it's that hot, I'm constantly battling the algae, and it's getting dirty all the time. And then sand. We'll have sandstorms come down that you can see a wall of sand coming down, and it blankets everything, and you can dust in the morning, and by noontime there's a layer of dust on everything. And so all of that combined, I made the sacrifice as a good husband to let my family have a pool. So we're getting ready to close it out because the cold season's coming, and it drops down to a freezing 70 degrees, and you just don't swim when it's that cool. Okay. And so we're getting ready, and I'm thinking, what can we do as a missionary, especially, first year on the field? I'm always trying to think of what stuff we can do to find inroads with our community. How can we connect? How can we, build relationships? That's what we're here for. And so I thought, well, Julie is really good at cooking. She's amazing at baking. So I said, Julie, here's what we're going to do. Before we close out the pool for the year, I'm going to open up the back gate. We'll let all the neighbor kids come in and swim. Their parents can come over. We'll have some fruit and some cookies. You can make some cookies. We'll pass it out. We'll just have a great time meeting our neighbors, getting to know everybody. And it was a very innocent thought, and it was a well-meaning and well-intentioned thought. So Julie's in there making the cookies. I went to the back, and I learned quickly you don't have to announce any sort of big event when you're doing ministry there, because you just let one kid know, and then everybody's going to find out, and everybody's going to want to come. So I opened the back gate, and a little kid walked by. I said, hey, kid, how would you like to come over and swim in our pool? He said, oh, yeah, that'd be great. I said, let your friends know, let all the neighbors know, and tell your parents everything. The gate will be open, and anybody can come. We're going to have some treats. He said, okay, and he just stood there. And I thought for a second, did he not understand what I said? Maybe my French isn't clear, or I was practicing Wolof a little bit. Maybe he didn't understand that. And I said, well, you could go get him. And he didn't go anywhere. He just turned, and as loud as he could, hey, everybody, the white guy opened his door, and he said we could go swimming. And I'm telling you, before I could even process what was happening, a rumbling started to take place in the neighborhood. And kids started to come out from everywhere. They're jumping over doors. They're running, popping out of the sand. I mean, they were coming from everywhere, and they started to converge on the gate. I'm thinking, oh, man, here they come. And so I'm counting, thinking, oh, maybe I don't know how many I can handle. Actually, maybe I didn't think this through well enough. And we got to about 20 kids. And I'm thinking, I don't know, that's kind of a lot for the pool, and I don't know. And so I better give them instructions. And so I go to close the gate, and I look down the road, and here comes another wave of like 20 kids around the corner. I went, oh, man. So I go to shut it, and I turn and look. And in Africa, and it was just boys who were over there. Girls don't go out as much and interact as much. It's usually the boys that are out. So it was just boys. But I turn and look, and I realized another thing about where we live. When boys go swimming, they don't have swimming clothes, swimming trunks or anything. And so they don't wear swimming trunks to swim. They don't wear anything. Okay. And I turn and look, and they're just going, wee, 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 diving into the pool. And I said, no, you've got to wear clothes. And so I didn't latch the gate secure enough because I'm running over now. Hey, no. At least keep your shorts on. You gotta keep something on. I'm running over there, and I'm trying to negotiate. And I look over, and I hear them at the gate. There's a horde at the gate. And I look over, and the gate's buckling in. They're going, heave, oh, heave. And it's starting to buckle in. I thought, oh, no, they're going to break in. And so I run over, but before I can latch it, it burst open. Another 20 kids come in. I finally get it pushed out. trying to, push back as many as I can. I'm trying to yell, keep your clothes on. I get it latched, and I turn around, and sure enough, wee. By this time, Julie comes around the corner. She's carrying a big tray of cookies, and she comes around and looks up, and she goes, Josh, they're naked. I said, I know. She said, you know? You told? I said, no, I didn't. I didn't tell them. They just did it. And in the meantime, I'm standing there with a camera because I thought I'd document this ministry and outreach. That's out the window. There's no pictures, but I still had the camera in my hand. And a neighbor kid, a teenager, he climbs up the wall. So he's climbing, looking in, what's going on. And all of a sudden I hear somebody yell out. It's this teenage kid. He yells out and goes, hey, the Two-Bob has a camera. He's taking pictures. You're going to sell it to National Geographic for money. And I said, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? Not taking any pictures today. It's done. So finally I said, Julie, get inside. Save yourself. I'll try to deal with this. And so I unplugged the pool, let all the water drain out. And then I said, get your clothes on and get out of here. Open the door, there's another bunch of kids. I mean, I'm serious. We probably 100 kids were just gathered around ready to come in. And of course, the parents are all like, oh, you guys having fun over there? That's good. They don't. They're having a great time. And so anyways, I grabbed some of the cookies, I think, and said, come out here, let's get in, pass them out. So I learned that day, try to be a little more organized and not so spontaneous. But the truth is, when we started doing film nights on Friday nights at our ministry center, we don't advertise really for anything. We just open the door, and it's that similar. They just come, and they come in and sit down. And we were nervous when we first started. When we built the building, we're in a tight-knit neighborhood. It's, I walk outside our front door, take 3 steps, and I'm in the neighbor's house. We're 2 doors down from our local mosque. I remember one day sitting in my office after we had completed the first floor, and I'm sitting in the office, and every Friday they do their main prayer and visit to the mosque. The main one is on Friday afternoons. And so everybody goes to mosque, all the men, and they line the streets because everybody can't fit in the local mosque all at once. And so usually our street in front of our house is just lined up with people just pointed toward the mosque, doing their prayers and all that, and then listening to a message. Every mosque has a loudspeaker, and they blast out the messages. So you cannot escape anywhere you go. And in fact, if you come to visit, one of the things that people remark on as well is how it's just constant on Fridays, beginning at maybe in the afternoon, maybe around 1 or 2, even earlier, they will just chant on these loudspeakers all day. And it's just, they'll go 3 hours straight where they're just saying the name Allah, 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 Allah. And it gets louder and louder and louder. And then this mosque kicks in and this loudspeaker kicks in. And you're just standing there going, oh, okay. It's a little overwhelming. Eventually you kind of drown it out, but it's still an interesting experience nonetheless. But I remember sitting there on a Friday afternoon, and I hear the imam, who I've met, I know him. He's preaching away, and really excited, passionate. And I kept hearing the word Two-Bob, white guy. Well, I'm the only white guy in this whole area. Well, he's talking about me. So I stepped outside, and he was basically saying, now, listen, the Two-Bob who lives here among us, he's a nice guy and everything and all that. But just he's teaching a false message, and don't follow, and just be very careful and all that. And everybody on the street, they kind of looked up at me, and I went, I don't know, I'm not. At least he said I'm a nice guy. I mean, that's a good thing. And went back inside. So you can understand, leading up to us opening our ministry center, which we built before we started even a church. It was part of our approach to how we felt God leading us to start a church. We had the funds we were able to raise. God took care of that. The property already belonged to the church that existed in the same city, just never been developed. So we put up a house. We thought, we could do Bible studies here. Muslims, especially in a Muslim majority country, do not go to church. They just don't. Even if they're interested in the gospel and they're having doubts about Islam, they will not publicly go to a church service. It'd be over for them just to even step foot. And so because of that, we built it a house. We began meeting for Bible studies, and I knew that, okay, even though we're not calling this a church building, and it's a tool to reach people with the gospel and bring them in. Once it gets found out what we're doing, I don't know how people are going to respond, how the neighbor's going to respond. We have a good relationship with everybody, but once we're living here, it might be another story. I remember walking up to the property. It was about a month away from our grand opening where we were, and by grand opening, I mean just actually meeting there and inviting 1 to 2 people at a time to come and, study the Bible and things. But I'm still nervous. I said, Lord, I just give us wisdom as we, open this thing up. And I remember I was approaching the front of the house. We're about 4 houses into an alleyway there. And as I got closer, I noticed there was a group of men gathered around the front door of our house there that we had built. I thought, oh no, they found out what we're here for. They're already getting ready to, run us out. And it did happen to a missionary friend of mine who he went in and started to work in an area and rented a little shop, and he was doing Bible studies, and he was a lot more open with, this is a Christian ministry center, that's what we're doing. And they just kind of, the neighbors, all the men gathered, sat him down, and just, it wasn't violent or anything, but they just went after him. And they said, we don't need you here, we don't want you here, this and that. So leading up, I'm thinking, oh man, what's gonna happen? I remember as I got closer, the crowd kind of parted, and there was an older gentleman sitting in the middle of the group of men that were gathered in front of our ministry center. And he said, hey, Tubab, he said, do you know Ron Bragg? And I said, yeah, Ron Bragg. He's the director of the mission I work with. He said, I know. I said, how did you know Ron Bragg? He said, he was my neighbor, because Ron Bragg happened to live in Senegal for 17 years in our city. He was one of the first missionaries in that region. And he said, he was my neighbor. He was the nicest Tubab I ever met. He said he was just a wonderful guy. He would eat with our family would eat with his kids would play with mine. And if there was anything I ever needed, he was just always there for us. He was the greatest guy I ever met and knew. And he said, hey, do you know the Baptist Mission? I said, well, yeah, everything that great guy you're talking about, Ron Bragg, everything he did with the Baptist Mission, we're just continuing it, and we're doing it right here. And this guy, I'd never met him before. He's a Muslim man. Turned to all my Muslim neighbors, and he said, this is a good work and this is a good mission. You get behind this guy. You don't ever cause him problems. I'm going to come back and check up on you and make sure that you're not making trouble for him. If he ever needs anything, you help him out. And they're nodding their heads, and I'm wagging my head. Yeah, that's good advice. I like this. And I'd never seen him before that, never saw him after that. And I probably called Julie as soon as I got in and said, I'm going to start Bible studies immediately, because God just planted him there, just put him there that day, just to say, I've got this, and it's what I'm going to do. Just don't worry about it. And yeah, for the first, 12 years at least, not even 10 people we led to Christ. And so we knew. And I learned this early. And it's hard to explain it when you tell people I'm going to plant churches. But I had to grapple at some point with, okay, I've been here 12 years. We haven't really established a church yet. Seen some people saved. If I said I'm coming to be a church planter and we don't ever plant a church, did I fail? Like what's happening here? I try to be positive, though, in life. I'm not naturally pessimistic. And I was reading through scriptures and realized it's the gospel that we plant. I'm not a church planter. Now we are, because that's the product of the gospel being planted. But my primary job is to plant the seed of the gospel. God takes care of the growth. I plant, another waters. Who gives the increase? I mean, it's not arrogant. I get what we mean by it, but church planting and church growth, that's up to God. And I realize I could spend 50 years here planting the seed and nobody gets saved and be successful, because that's what God has called us to do, and break up that hardened ground. And maybe somebody will come in and reap the fruit. Now, we've seen God work in amazing ways. We saw by 2018, and God answered a prayer as we were starting our church. I kept praying, Lord, would you send us a man from a very particular family? Now, because of a former colleague of ours, that there was a falling out with this gentleman. He had been saved, this gentleman, back in the 90s. It's an incredible testimony how he was from a Muslim family, came to Christ and all of that. and then his 5 children followed suit. It took his wife longer. His name's Adama Job. It took his wife longer to get saved. She was very bitter over the fact that they lost everything. They were kicked out of their house. They were cut off from family. He didn't have a job. Everything. And all he had was this little plot of land, which when I visited in 2004 was where they dumped all their trash. Now it's grown up since then. And he just stayed faithful. His wife got saved later. Her story is an incredible story. But out of his family, they attended the church there that was across town where we attended and helped. And for one reason or another, before we arrived in Senegal, there was kind of a falling out, and they weren't attending the Baptist church where we attended, another good church in the area. But I said, Lord, would you send either the dad back to work with us in this new church plant or one of his sons who were all in ministry? But because they were all faithfully serving in ministry, I didn't feel it'd be ethical for me to go and try to bring them over and, and incentivize and say, hey, why don't you come work with me? So I just gave it to the Lord. And about a year and a half went by, and one of his sons, Malik Job, he came and moved back to our city. And he had been working with another missionary in another town, came back to Senegal, and actually in Bible college, there was a country I pulled out of a hat. It wasn't Senegal, but it was near Senegal, and we ended up in Senegal. Well, he was born and raised in that country that I pulled out. He's Senegalese, but that's where his dad was living when he was born, and he lived there for most of his life early on. So to me, it's really neat that our lead pastor is from the country that I originally chose, even though he's now, he's originally from our city where we are in Senegal. And so he moved back to Saint Louis and came to church one Sunday morning, and I thought, oh, hey, he's part of the Job family. I've been praying that one of the sons or the dad, one of them would come over and work with us because we need a national partner, not somebody to work for me, a partner, somebody to work who's an evangelist, has a heart for people and a heart to evangelize and church plant. And he came over, and that first Sunday, he came up to me afterward. He said, I can't really explain it, but I feel like God is leading me to come back and join your church here. I grew up in the church when they moved back, and his family got saved when he was young. He got saved and grew up in the Baptist church that was there in Saint Louis, and we were just starting a second church. And he said, I feel like God might want me to come and join here. And I'm not sure why, but I just feel led. I thought, well, I know exactly why. Okay, God's an answer to prayer. And I'm telling you, time after time after time, we've seen God answer so many specific prayer requests. Once Malik joined our team, we would spend hours together just sharing our hearts and approach. I learned so much of what I learned in planting churches and contextualizing and working in the context of Senegal. I'm so indebted to Pastor Malik Job. And by 2019, we probably saw more people saved and baptized than we had seen in the whole years previous combined. And God was just doing a special work. And of course, people would show up, and we never advertise. We do a lot of online videos, but it's not associated with our church. It's called Our Hope. Our church is called Living Hope Baptist Church in the Wolof language, but we don't really associate the two that much. But we would just have people show up. We don't have a sign up. People would just randomly show up to the church, the house where we were doing church services, and say, I'm just looking, wanting to come study the Bible. And just little by little, God began to work in incredible ways. January 2020, Malik became the official lead pastor of the church, and the church was doing well. We probably had 30 or 40 regular attenders. And then, of course, COVID hit, and everything was shut down. But God did not shut down during COVID. God kept working in incredible ways. And it was funny because every country responded differently. Of course, when you're in a third world, underdeveloped country, you take things very seriously when it comes to, pandemics and outbreaks. And so they did. It was very strict, very serious for the first couple months. By month 3, the imams in our country said, we've got to have mosques. We got to, we're going to open up. So they basically, told the president, we're doing this, so you might as well approve it. And he did. And things just kind of went back to normal. And it was never really that big of an effect there. But what we noticed was during the time when everybody was at home, well, what did you do during that time? Well, people went online, just started watching stuff. And our videos that we had already been producing just began to get hundreds of thousands of more views. And it just kept growing and growing. And we were having people reaching out from all over, Muslims reaching out saying, we've never heard anything taught like this. Roman Catholics were reaching out because they were cut off from Mass and were having a real identity crisis. Like, if I can't go to Mass, how can I get saved? That's kind of what they're taught. You got to go to Mass for salvation. And we would have Roman Catholics reach in. In fact, a lady in our church, she came with tears in her eyes one day and said, I have an aunt who is kind of the matriarch of our family. And her family's all Catholic. She was the first to get saved and join our church out of her family. And she said she called me and said she had been watching the videos that Malik produces and Wolof. And she said she finally got a Bible and she started reading it for herself. And she said, they haven't told us half of it. Like, they haven't told us any of this. She said, I'm so upset. Her aunt told her, I'm so upset that I've never been told any of this. She said, can you guys get me a Bible? Because our Bible, I don't trust the Catholic Bible. I don't trust it because they're not telling us anything. We were able to get her a Bible, and just we began seeing people responding. Again, people seeing, there's so many barriers that are put up to the gospel. And we're beginning to do, throughout the country, we do Islamic evangelism seminars, and we train church leaders how to use social media to share the gospel, and then how to use that to network with those that reach out to start in-person Bible studies. So that's kind of our ministry right now. When we go back, and in the coming future, we've already launched it, but basically I'll be traveling a lot more, basing out of our home church, and there's still a lot, and there's so many stories I'll get to with what's going on even in San Luis, but moving forward, as we continue to develop the work there, Malik, as the lead pastor, is just doing a fantastic job. The church is in good hands, continues to grow under his leadership and expand, and God is blessing in so many ways, which has allowed me as well now to now branch out and train other church leaders to use media. I coach them on how to present yourself with the camera and do teaching in your local language. I help them grow the site, and then you network with the people that reach out, how to follow up with comments and WhatsApp and all of that, and then make in-person contact with those who are reaching out. And we've had people, like I mentioned earlier this morning, from all over, not just Senegal, but all over North Africa that have come to Christ. The country I was telling you about, that it's illegal to be a Christian. Like I said, they're using the media as well to be able to share the gospel in other countries and surrounding regions. And so with that, we are now starting a network of Bible studies and church planting throughout the region. And the prayer is, you can join us praying for this, is that every major city in our country, as well as Gambia and then beyond, will have a center where those we reach, men and women that are trained to use our materials in every major city. So when we meet somebody in that region, we already have an ambassador that can represent the ministry, so we can put them in touch, and they know how to be subtle in the way they approach the Bible studies, because you have to be very careful with our Muslim friends in the way that you can't expose too early. As soon as somebody finds out that they're interested in learning about the scriptures, it's trouble. And they'll just back off and say, you know what, I just can't do this. And so there's a very specific approach. And of course, we learned all of that by spending the first 12 years taking it so slow, very slow, knowing that we're planting a seed, and God will give the increase in his time. And now we're seeing that these barriers, I want you to think about this, okay? When it comes to, and this is universal with all Muslims, okay? If you grew up as a Christian, or think about back when you got saved, if you got saved later in life. When you were discipled, or as a child, your parents taught you Bible stories, you went to Sunday school, you were not told, okay, let's do that. How many of you were told what Islam is all about when you were in Sunday school, when you were taught? How many of you were taught, this is what Islam teaches and you need to reject it and all that? Nobody. Every Muslim child, from the time they are young, they are not just taught about what Islam positively affirms. You cannot be a Muslim without the negative rejection, the negation of Christianity. In other words, the positive affirmation of Islam requires a negation of the core Christian doctrines and claims of Christ. So you need to remember, when you meet a Muslim, they have been taught from the time they're 3, 4 years old that God doesn't have a son, that God does not produce children, everything, that Jesus is not God, that the crucifixion did not happen. Everything that is the core tenet, it's not just that they are told this is what Islam is, we believe in one God, Muhammad is the prophet, but they are actively taught what to reject with Christianity. Every prayer a Muslim makes every day, 5 times a day, includes a phrase which says, God is not begotten, neither does he beget and have children. Okay? So their very prayers is a negation of Christianity. So with that being said, it makes sense when in my first year there, when I was trying to practice my Wolof language with these 12-year-old boys that came to our library, I mentioned all the names of the prophets, Dawda, David, Musa, Moses, Yusuf, Joseph. And they were all excited. And I'm practicing my Wolof, they're giggling. I turned the page and I said, Limoy Nentali Yonentiyala Isa. This is the story of the prophet Isa. Notice I said prophet Isa. That's where we start, because he was a prophet, but that was just one of many titles Jesus is. All I did was say the name Jesus. And these 12-year-old boys immediately, in unison, stood up, plugged their ears, stomped their feet, and began chanting, God doesn't have a son. God doesn't have a son. God has no son. And I realized later, that's when you're taught that, that's your. So there's so many barriers and walls that are put up that you have to break them down one by one. One of them is Muslims just don't convert. Most Muslims honestly believe that. They honestly believe we just don't become Christian. Especially if you're Wolof. You just don't become Christian. It doesn't happen. So when they're scrolling online and a video pops up of a guy named Malik, that's an Islamic name. It comes from Melik, which means king. So it's an Arab name. But like most things, our Muslim friends like to claim everything is theirs. Jesus was a Muslim. Abraham was a Muslim. You grow a beard, you must be a Muslim. Okay, they claim everything, right? And so Malik is a Muslim name. Job is a Wolof name. Very strong. The Job family is one of the most prominent families in the Wolof people. And so when they're scrolling and they see, wait a second, here's a guy named Malik Job, and his first name is actually Sarin, which means it's a title of a teacher in Islam, and so that's an even bigger deal. Sarin Malik Job. And he's dressed in the bubu, which is the Senegalese, outfit. He has a beard. He's speaking Wolof. He's talking about Jesus, like he's a Christian. Now, if they're going to see just some French dude who's on there talking about, oh, tu dois, you need to believe in Jesus. Okay, that's for the two, but Christianity is for the white people anyways. And they'll just keep scrolling. But they'll stop and say, well, who's this guy? And in fact, we hosted Medical Mission Outreach. And if you do medical at all, go on their website. If you want to, they do incredible trips all over. I hope they come back to Senegal, because the last trip, it was a little traumatizing on the last day. It got a little chaotic. A bunch of people knew that we were about to shut down, and it was in a part of town where there's no Christian witness at all. It's the fishing village. And not only that, but the Senegalese who live outside the fishing village in town, they're afraid to go work with the fishing village, because there's a lot of superstitions with fishermen and all that, but they're 100% Muslim. There's no Christian witness at all. With all the research we did before we went in there, nobody has ever been there to evangelize at all. And so it's a tough place. And we brought a medical team in there. We have two medical professionals in our church. So they helped spearhead it. We got in there, rented a school. We're going great most of the week. And then the final day, one of the men who was with the village there, who was in charge, he was letting his own people get in, his close friends, when you're not supposed to cut line. And the crowd knew it. and they got mad, and everybody stormed inside all at once. So you can imagine the workers who had never been to Africa before, our guests, they got a little nervous thinking we're about to get overrun. Now, they were never in danger. But that being said, one of the first days we were there, the imam for the whole region was there. And he walks in with his big outfit on, and he's got his Quran, he's got his entourage, and he's talking with some of our leaders. And he keeps looking at Malik, and he said, I think I know you. Malik said, I don't think we've met before. I've never been in this area. He said, no, I think I know you. Do you do teaching online? Malik said, yeah, Sunnah Yakar. He said, that's it. He said, I've been watching your teaching for the past year. I've enjoyed it. And we thought about that. Here's an area where there's no gospel witness at all. And we come in to share the gospel using medical, which opens so many doors. And it softens so many hearts. But for a year prior to us coming, the most influential spiritual guide of that region has been watching Malik's teaching. None of that's a coincidence. All of this is God orchestrating and working in the way that he wills and the way he chooses. And it's been incredible to watch all of those stories multiplied hundreds and hundreds of times over through the ministry there. And that's exciting. To us, it's exciting to be able to play a small role in that, in helping to equip men like Malik to do this teaching online, to train their people to then engage in person and with those we meet online, meet in secret if they have to, and use our material to teach and engage. And we're seeing people responding all across the nation, all across North Africa. It's an exciting work to be a part of. And God is at work in the Islamic world, and God is at work in the hearts of Muslims. And there's so many incredible ways in which God is working. The church is doing fantastic, wonderfully, actually. In fact, whenever we do either a short trip home or a furlough home, we go back and it seems like there's more people joining the church when we're not there. Maybe we need to go away more. But as we travel around, the church is doing very well. We've been able to purchase property outside of town. That was a miracle God provided for us to find it, raise the funds for it. We got a new church building up that's dedicated just for the church. And it's great because it's a completely new development, and we're the first ones there, which means everybody else, Muslim or not, who moves into town, we're already there. So we're church. We're a church, and we do church, and this is who we are. And of course, we already have a great reputation in the city already. And it's been amazing. We went out to a village where we built a school building for kids because a member of our church taught out in this Fulani village. It's all Muslim village. And she taught out there in the school, but they only had this little shack. And if it rained, you couldn't have school and all that. So we were able to raise just $5,000 and put up a single-room school building for this village. And about 60 kids can come in all at once if they all need to. And so we go out there yearly and we distribute Christmas gifts for them. We go out there and share the gospel. We did a medical outreach out there once. We got a bounce house and go out there and just constantly interacting. And for me, the goal has always been for us to take steps back into the shadows as the church steps forward and leads the work. Because if we're the ones who are always at the forefront of ministry as the foreigners, and then it's time for us to leave, if God either leads us somewhere else, we don't plan on leaving, but if we were kicked out of the country, and we're the ones at the forefront of everything, well, who's going to lead it? So it feels counterproductive to train people and then just step back and you sit there as you watch them do the work. But this is what we're called to do. I remember it was earlier this year we went out there. And it's a funny thing, but it's just how, if that was the goal, we sat there as the teachers presented Malik with a gift. Now this is in front of 60 students and all the teachers and a bunch of parents, all Muslim. And I don't know if I can express to you how big a deal this is. Because Malik said when his dad got saved, as far as they know, he's the first Wolof believer in our entire northern region ever. First Wolof to come to Christ in that region. And people would walk across the street just not to cross paths with them. he said we would have people later, like 20 years later, coming to us and say, yeah, when I was a kid, they would say you guys were evil and your dad was evil and that he was just, doing all kinds of bad things and stuff. They would say all kinds of things, but your dad's one of the nicest guy I ever met. What are you talking about? And so, I don't know, to reiterate just what a big deal this is, but as we sat there in that classroom in that village, the teacher pulled out a picture of Malik. It was a picture she pulled off of Facebook. And on it, they had written, thank you. These are all Muslim. Thank you, Pastor Malik Job. And in front of all the kids, and with our family sitting in the corner, they had Malik come up and said, we want to thank Pastor Malik Job for all that he's done for this village. And you know what they didn't do? And I was so grateful. They didn't acknowledge us once in the whole time. They didn't say, oh, and Pastor Dowd over here, the white guy, we want to thank him too for raising the money and being here and, kind of spirit. They didn't, it was like we weren't even there. That's exactly what we came to do. And now we can take that model of what we've done and just reproduce it all over. As we continue to mentor and work with Malik and base out of San Luis, God's opening doors. We're planning a church in Gambia right now, and we get the privilege to go there. I'm going back in July as the church there is working on a church plant and training men to do all that. But Malik said, just 10 years ago, for a Muslim to even say the words, Pastor Malik Job, would never have called me pastor. And now all these kids who maybe in the past would have been told how evil Christians are, they now saw a man who looks like them, speaks like them, who is one of them, who still has his Islamic name, Malik, okay? And he's a pastor. And they're going to remember that. And it's one of those barriers that are torn down, that will never be constructed again, because they know these are people that love us and he's real and they've done all this for us. That's a wall that'll never be built up again. And that just lets the gospel get that much closer. And again, I could tell story after story of people writing in and commenting, Malik, we just started a Mandinka page with a partner in Gambia. Okay. And within 2 months, we had 45,000 followers, and we're having people writing in and questions. Mandinka people are probably 99% Muslim, if not full. And one of the early comments, some guy wrote and said, I could hear his tone, even though it was a comment. He said, what? There's Mandinka Christians now? What's the world coming to? Okay. But it's just, again, yes, there are. Because Jesus is for everybody. And every lie you've been told about who Jesus is for and what Christianity is, we're breaking down those barriers. And I would say it's one person at a time, but with media, it's millions at a time that we're able to reach. When we first arrived in Senegal, I prayed and asked the Lord to allow us to reach every person and make the gospel accessible to everybody in Senegal. Well, we bypassed that a long time ago with the media outreach. A young man in our church went down to Cosmo and said, we'll do questions now if you want to come up and maybe take some questions. So think of some questions. I don't want to keep you here that long, because I know after we have lunch, take our nap and everything. So we do the preaching before we have lunch in Senegal, then we go home and nap. And so we won't stay long if there's a few questions. But a guy in our church, he said his brother lives in southern Senegal, where we've been invited to come and help start churches and develop churches. And he said, my whole family's Catholic. And he said, I try to evangelize as much as I can. And he said he went down to visit, and he was talking to his younger brother. And they were talking about the Lord, and he was talking about salvation. And finally, his brother said to him, hey, I want to ask you, have you ever heard of a guy named Malik Job? And he's like, well, yeah, how do you know Malik Job? He said, well, I watch he does these episodes on YouTube. It's called Sunu Yakar. Do you know about that? He said, yeah. He said, yeah, I even reach out to him and he answers my questions. So actually, I've been really, gotten a lot of questions answered. And so he was far more open. And the guy in our church said, Malik is my pastor. And he was just so touched that already he wants his brothers to be saved, but already with the use of media, they've already been going down that path of receiving the gospel and the seed being planted. And so our biggest prayer request as you pray for us is just the development of the media ministry, safety for some of the men. There's some men that we can't show their faces because they would be attacked and killed. It depends on the ethnic group they're with. One man, we're going to develop media with him. He's a scholar of Islam, but we just found out a couple weeks ago his family is actively hunting him down now to kill him. And so once we get him to a safe space, another country, once that's established, then I'm going to go visit him. We'll start producing content. And he told me he knows the risk. He's not going to show his face. And with AI today, it's incredible what you can do with media today and all that. But he said, even if it gets found out that it's me, he said, I have to expose the lies. We love our Muslim neighbors. We love our Muslim friends. But everything they believe is a lie. Everyone, every bit of it. And so there is a level of danger, but we've never felt in danger. That might be a question somebody has. But the more you confront the darkness directly, the more confrontational and the more visceral the response might be. So just pray for the safety of the men and women the men especially, who are doing the teaching online and all of that. All right, we want to do a couple questions before we leave. I don't want to keep you here too long. And so
I would just open it up to if someone has a question. Lisa.
right. Yeah, I haven't been to southern Senegal yet. So eventually, I'm hoping next year to get down there. There's a network of churches that have asked us to come do training. Malik has been down there several times, and there's a definite need. A lot of people are open to the gospel. It's either animistic or Catholic down there, but many people are open to the gospel. They just don't have training. Nobody's down there, teaching and doing training and all that. So there's a need, and so we haven't been there yet, but we have been to Gambia many times. It's a little frustrating because it's the same language, Wolof. They do speak English because it was a British colony. If you look at Senegal, it's like somebody poked their finger right in the middle. It's where the Gambia River is. It was colonized by the Brits, and so it's a completely different system. A little bit, it's definitely different culturally, although there's a lot of similarities. And I guess it's just frustrating because it's the same country basically, but every time we go down there, it's a big mess trying to get in and everything. But really, we've never had any major issue, and we go in and out. The missionary who was there before us, I'm now on paperwork. I'm the president of the mission down there because he's not in the country anymore. But he was able to get that filled out. We have 2 beautiful pieces of property there, beautiful apartment. So if you have a sense of maybe God wants me to go into missions, Gambia, you should learn Wolof, but you could start right away speaking English. There's a beautiful apartment. I don't know how he did it, but this missionary was only there for about 4 years in country, and he raised like $500,000 to build a church building and then this beautiful apartment that's for missionaries. And so we stay there whenever we go, and there's shops on We're actually starting a new Bible study church plant on the first level in these shops that we rent out. And so we go back and forth quite a bit. And it's time consuming, but not too, it's not complicated really. So. From Benin? Ooh, that's probably thousands of miles. Africa is so big. Now it's part of the West African states. So you got Benin, you've got Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea-Bissau. They're right next to us. Mali is next to us. So we're all part of the West African states. But I mean, West Africa is probably the size of the USA, combined. So, and that's just one part of Africa. I think you could fit 4 United States land mass into Africa as a continent. So it's huge. So it's thousands of miles away, but yeah. Right. Yep. Right. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's honestly the Muslim population and the Muslim ethnic groups that are more radical. And by radical, it means they're serious about their faith. There's more violence. They're the Fulani are the people group that's actually our largest platform of who we're reaching, and we're seeing more Fulani get saved than any other ethnic group, but they're the most likely to be violent as well. They're the ones you hear about Boko Haram, you hear about the attacks in Nigeria, all of that are Fulani. And what we found was the more laid back, like Malik has told me, your average Wolof, we don't know anything about Islam. We do our prayers on Friday. We just live our life. And we're Muslim and they're proud of it. And you start talking about Jesus and all of a sudden they're scholars when it comes to Islam and what is wrong with Christianity. But I sat down with a guy who was studying to be an imam and started asking him basic questions that, I had in initial study knew about Islam. And he's like, no, it doesn't say that. I'm like, here's the verse. And he's like, oh, it does say that. So just things like that where it's more of just, it's the ritual, which in most false religions, I think Catholicism has the same thing. We have a tendency to hold on to the rituals and something tangible to say, well, I did something for God, so he'll let me into heaven. So that's kind of more what it is. But we're seeing people, it's a weird paradigm because where Islam is more violently practiced, more people are getting saved. And I even sat in a prayer meeting where one of the men that was there asked the Lord to increase the intensity of persecution so more people would be saved. And I felt like leaving and saying, I don't want part of this prayer meeting. I don't want to do that. But it's true, where there's more just laid back, like, oh, you got your faith, we got ours, we can live together, we're cool, we're all good, it's no problem. Let's have a meal together, I'll eat with you. A Muslim's not allowed to eat with a non-Muslim. You're not. Like, oh yeah, of course, sit down and eat. Let's all eat together. But because of that, makes it that it's great for building relationships, but we'll spend years and years just getting somebody to see even a need for considering the gospel, And so it's more challenging, I think, when they're less when they're less violent. It's growing up overseas, it can be unique because when we travel back to the States, a lot of times we've tried to be very intentional. I took a lot of advice, read books early on. So we tried to enact some things we did very intentionally. Whenever I would come back, our home church was very gracious to let them go to school. And our churches are, I had a missionary tell me just this week, we were at BIMI, and he's from he's a little bit older. And he said, Josh, back when I raised support, he said, I had pastors tell me, if you put any of your money into retirement for the future, we will not support you. And he said, that was just kind of the idea. Like and so it was a different way of thinking back then. I'm so grateful for our churches today that understand, look, when we're back in the States, I'm going to have my kids in school and it might just be me coming to update. Sometimes they get to come with me if it's on a weekend. Sometimes my wife will come with me, but she might not. And so church has been very good. I'm so appreciative of all our churches, really, that they recognize the family is so important. And we prioritize our family. And so, it can be difficult for some in some fields. Our field is a little more difficult because it's just a novelty being a white kid because there's just no white kids in our city. You just, one or two we'll see, other missionary kids, but it's such a novelty that it's not really a friendship. It's just you're the white kid. You're the token white kid. So they have good friends in church that they're very close with. But again, even when we're there for 2-3 years, we do a quick trip to the States. They're constantly, building either surface level friendships or very quickly making deep friendships. And so we've tried to balance it. I guess we'll see. I think they're turning out all right, but it could be, those are challenges for sure. And when you think of your missionaries, just pray for the wives, pray for the kids, pray for the husbands, that they'll be intentional in how the decisions they make for their family, because it's so important. But it's a very good question.
All right, Richard, last one.
I don't know if I missed it or
When I'm there, we do the most of evangelism, one-on-one conversations I do is in the Wolof language. And then I speak French as well. And so a lot of the teaching, if it's deeper teaching with guys I'm training, I'll do more French. Or if I'm just out and about doing, chores during the day, groceries, things like that, it's a mix of both languages. And so they've really created, it's like Spanglish, right? Spanish and English. It's French and Wolof combined really is what I would probably speak more than anything. But if I'm sharing the gospel, I try to stick just to Wolof. And then when it comes to like deep theological teaching, I rely on French just because there's more books written in French. I edit videos in the Fulani language, so I can't speak it, but I can understand the gist of what's being said. I've done it enough. And then I'd like to learn Arabic. That's a ways down the road, and that's a tough language. And then we work in Mandinka. I edit videos in Mandinka, but I have no clue. I have to make sure I run it by somebody who speaks Mandinka before I post it, because I hope I edited it correctly and all that. But anyways, yeah. Yeah.
So you've given us kind of some updates on things to pray for and all that. What's probably the best way to kind of just, besides prayer, like supporting, like reaching out to you, contacting you, stuff like that? What's probably the best way?
Yeah, we love hosting. For example, we love hosting mission trips. And in the coming years, Julie and I are going to be organizing more mission trips with different objectives, whether it's a youth group coming to do sports. We want to develop a sports ministry. We have a man who attends our church. His name is Emmanuel Priorta, but families at naming ceremonies, they'll give their kids names of people they admire and respect. And so Malik introduced me to this guy. His name's Emmanuel, but he said his dad gave him the name Bill Clinton. And I said, what? Bill Clinton? What did your dad give you that name for? He said he liked Bill Clinton. I said he must not have known Bill Clinton or anything about him. He said he didn't. He had no clue. He just knew he was a president when, anyway. So Bill Clinton attends our church, and he's part of one of 3 teams in the universities. They're trying to get to the Olympics, but they play flag football, which I got really excited about because I'm not a soccer guy at all, but I loved football growing up. And so we're going to have teams come over and do sport outreach. We have a Tally Bay tournament every year, and whether it's medical outreach or it's an educational thing. So yeah, it's, pray about maybe coming on one of those trips, and we post those online whenever we plan one coming up. You're invited to visit us anytime. And then, of course, praying for us. We always love to hear just words of encouragement and updates. And we're always appreciative whenever we have a special project. Pastor will usually present it if it's a big project or something. And we're always appreciative of God's, he's always met our financial needs with projects. And so we've always been grateful for that. But yeah, I would say just praying is a big one. We always enjoy notes of encouragement, email or whatever. And then yeah, consider coming out to visit us. We love it. We love hosting people.
Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and stand. No need for an invitation per se for this afternoon, but I would hope that you would just talk with a family before you head out this afternoon, just to tell them how much of a blessing they were today, just with their ministry and just the message we heard this morning. If you want, you guys can go ahead and sneak out right now just so you can get back to your booth. I'm sure that they got some prayer cards and stuff like that. I would encourage you to grab and to pray for them as well. And again, just the last reminder, there is a giving box specifically on the information desk just for the Mead family, if you feel so led to give above and beyond that. Let's go ahead and pray. Well, is there any other announcements I'm missing? I know Pastor always does this. Any announcements and stuff? We will see you next here on the 4th of July this Saturday. Remember, no service this Wednesday. We'll see you Saturday. Let's pray and let's be dismissed. Dearly Father, we just thank you for this afternoon. Just thank you for the ministry of the Meads and just their time that they spent with us today. We just pray that you'll give them safety as they travel back home and just they travel abroad and all the stuff that they have planned for the upcoming months and years. Just bless them and protect them and just help us to be a blessing to them just now and just through the future through here at Mount Baptist Church. Thank you for all you've done for us, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. We'll see you Saturday.